Hello again. Here I am back with my fixed computer, and I'm hoping it won't be sort of humming away again in the background as it was previously. In this little video I just want to talk about the beginnings and the ends of your story. We talk about structure in general in week 4, and I do recommend that if you haven't read that material that you head on back and look through it and just think about how you can use that structure to build your story, because a good strong structure gives the story the kind of shape that leads to a forward-moving narrative, and a forward-moving narrative is always valuable. But in here I just want to talk particularly about the beginning and the end of a story, because I see I see a lot of fiction by new writers which has one of 3 main problems, and those are the ones I just want to identify and ask you to consider in your own writing to make sure that they're not present. So the first thing I see is a too slow start. A story that has a lot of description or introductory information that sort of tells about the story or sets the scene for the reader, and those are almost always sort of slowing the story down, and you just don't have room for that when it's only 600 words. So the advice is that you start with the action of the story. The action of the story doesn't mean it's got to be something kaboom. It's not a mountain exploding or a car crashing or a storm obliterating an island or anything like that. In context of a story, the action is relevant to what the main character is doing that kicks off the actual story. So if you've got a lonely old lady living in a retirement village, and she's there because her husband gambled all the money away and sold the farm, and she's just absolutely devastated and alone, and happens to be wandering around with insomnia and notice in the middle of the night the neighbour burying something in the garden, you wouldn't include all of that backstory that I've just rambled on about. The story would start with her peering through the curtain and observing the neighbour. Some of the other story might be important and have to be threaded through the narrative at some point, but it's not a good practice to start with just this dump of exposition that explains it all. And as another example, if you've got a teenage girl running away from home who gets picked up by a truck driver or something like that, there might be a lot of really good reasons that are important to the story as to why she's leaving home, why she's running away, but it's much better to actually start with her heading down the road and to just drop in little tidbits of information through the narrative. So with your own story, make sure you look at it and you think, is this the character's main action? Is this actually kicking off the events of the story? And if it's not, if you've got scene setting, or if you've got description, or if you've got explanation, chop that paragraph off and start where the action starts. So I am a bit breathless today. I don't know why. I haven't even been running upstairs. So the next thing I'd like to just consider is the end of your story. So one of the main things I see in new fiction that I would like you to avoid, so review for this, is a change of point of view at the end. So a story might be told all the way through, say from the runaway's point of view, or from the lonely old lady spying on her neighbour point of view, and then get to the last paragraph and suddenly the writer will change point of view and finish off the story by telling it from the neighbour's point of view, the person burying the bones in the garden, say. Or they may switch to a completely different sort of author voice, if you like, who hasn't even been present in the story at all. So when you review your story, if you get to the end and you can see that you've slipped out of that narrating character's point of view and changed to another one, or just sort of had this added on kind of impersonal paragraph from the author basically, then you need to stop, chop that off, go back into your story and finish it off from your character's point of view. We're just about up to 4.5 minutes, but I just want to add quickly the third element that is important that you don't use in your story, and that is a bracketing narrator. And what I mean by that is a narrator who you begin writing from. So let's just use this scenario. You might have a character who's got to go into hospital for some reason. So the opening scene will be, I'm lying in bed in hospital feeling sorry for myself, and this old fellow is wheeled in and put into the bed beside me. So you start like that, but then the story goes on to tell the story of the old fellow who comes in. So that character might end up talking his story to your first character. And then at the end, when the old fellow's finished telling his story, so to speak, the narrating character will say, well, I really hope I never end up like that, or whatever it is. And that's where the story ends. But in almost all instances, especially in a short story, the key is to get rid of that narrating character. Tell the story of the old guy in the bed. Don't use another narrator to tell that story. It kind of puts a distance between the reader and the events in the story and prevents a really close connection. So when reviewing your story for the assessments, check the beginning starts with the action, check the ending ends with the main narrator's point of view, and that you haven't used a narrating character, and that way you'll have a much stronger story.